And I'm super excited to have the Colorado Workforce Development Council in the house today. So I have sitting right next to me Renise Walker. She is the senior consultant for CWDC. How are you doing?
Doing really well, Alex. Really excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, my pleasure. So you are one of the guests that we have on every month, and you guys always do some really exciting stuff. And one of the things that I thought when I first started working with you guys is that you'd really take the summer months off, considering that you do a lot of education work, but that is completely false, right?
Were you listening in on my dreams?
Yeah, no.
Exciting month ahead, Alex. Really looking forward to the Think Big conference coming up in August. It's taking place August 27th in Vail, Colorado, and that's our statewide youth serving conference. So young adults, people who are serving young adults coming together to think about career pathways and opportunities for young people in Vail.
Yes, so define young people, youth adults for me. Are we talking over 18 or are we talking as young as 14?
It's a pretty broad spectrum.
Okay.
We are seeing more and more people starting really early on thinking about career pathways and workforce development opportunities for even our youngest folks as early as middle school and in some cases elementary education.
Yeah.
But this year, excited to have a youth track for people 16 to 24. So our young
Fantastic.
leaders who are really helping to contribute to lead the work will be there between the ages of 16 and 24.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. What else do you have going on this month in particular?
So down in Colorado Springs, August 19th through 23rd, we're proud to be a host of the National Governors Association Summer Conference. And so governors from around the country will be joining us in Colorado to talk about some of the main issues affecting states.
Fantastic. And I like to think, I probably think that you would agree with me on this, but Colorado is a leader in a lot of ways. And so I like to think that when governors and when we have national meetings here, we're really looked upon as kind of the leader and we get a lot of first programs.
We have so many exciting things, lots coming, started from the local level to the state level, and so many people really curious to hear about it, and so a good chance to share that and also learn from other people as well.
Absolutely, yes. So we have a great show. As we mentioned, we were talking youth, but we're talking early childhood education today. Something that is really exciting. I know that we just got all-day kindergarten voted upon, so that was a huge win all across Colorado. But I'm going to let you introduce today's guests.
Yeah, talking the whole education continuum. So honored to be kicking it off with Dr. Katy Anthes from the Colorado Department of Education. So Katy, can I turn it over to you to talk a little bit about what do you do as a commissioner and what is the work of the Colorado Department of Education?
Sure. Thanks, Renise, and thanks, Alex. I'm really excited to be here. I do want to thank the Colorado Workforce Development Council for inviting me. We do a lot of partnering with them in education and also the Business Roundtable. What does the commissioner do? That's a good question. Well, the Colorado Department of Education is the state agency that oversees all 178 school districts across Colorado and all of our charter schools, and all of those school districts serve over 900,000 students. So we oversee licensing for teachers, our state accountability system, and we distribute billions of dollars in state and federal funding for schools. So we work to make sure that our State Board of Education policies are implemented, and also the laws from the legislature and the governor are implemented. So a lot of our work is really supporting districts in implementing those laws.
And 178 districts, that's a lot to support. And so we'll hear a little bit more from you later about some of the stuff going on in those districts. Thomas, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. You're a consultant at the Workforce Development Council. What do you do with your role?
Well, as a consultant with the council, I'm kind of involved with a little bit of everything, implementing a lot of the initiatives that come from the state, from the governor level, from the different legislation, even at the national level. And what we're doing is we mainly support sector partnerships and career pathway building. So those are key strategies involved with a lot of those pieces of legislation or funding from the federal level and the state level. A specific example, I collaborate with staff within internally, and then all of our partners, public partners, and also the industries are involved. And we look at career pathway frameworks, and we specifically develop pathways for specific career tracks.
Now, how often does everyone get along?
How often do we get along?
We always get along.
I don't know when we've ever not gotten along. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think a lot when I travel the country, I hear that similar thing to what you're hearing, where Colorado is a leader in many ways. And the thing that I'm most proud of is people come to me and they say, Colorado, you guys collaborate so well. You work together, you enjoy each other, and we don't really, it's not a competitive feeling.
Right.
Even when we're working with industries within the same sector, they really promote that all boats rise kind of philosophy. That's a really neat thing to be a part of.
Fantastic.
And Thomas, you mentioned career pathways as kind of one way that the collaboration is happening in Colorado. Tell us more. What does career pathways mean?
So simply, career pathways are a series of connected educational training programs, work experiences, and support services that enable individuals to secure a job or advance in their career or their chosen occupation.
And why does that matter?
It's kind of important, I think, because in Colorado, we specifically focus on industry-driven career pathways. So that means all of the work that we do, we're informed by the industry. We're informed by the industry we're looking at. They're telling us what's important, what their pain points are, what they're finding folks to work in the jobs, and do they have the right qualifications? Do they have the competencies, the skills, the knowledge that is required? And so some of that's good because we also give feedback back to our educational institutions and say, this is what industry is telling us. And when we meet with industry, we sometimes do that without the educators in the room so that we get to hear unfiltered how they're feeling. And we share that back with education and different training entities as a sort of a neutral party, the Colorado Workforce Development Council. We're in a good position to help both sides understand the needs of each side.
Awesome. A bit like a mediator role.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Although it's a great, I mean, it's very synergistic, and it's not at all adversary in that way. We educators are really focused on educating their students, and so sometimes don't have all the time, to understand exactly what all the industry needs are and what the top industries are. And so this partnership, and our teams work on a weekly basis together, so that information sharing is seamless, and then we can make sure that our counselors and schools are up to speed and up to date on the most needed skills and the industries that are popping for Colorado.
Katy, that's such an important point. Time. Lots of busy people, 178 districts, lots of businesses throughout the state. What is the state doing to help create these career pathways and bring together business and education?
Yeah, well, we're doing a lot of things. This is one of our core goals as our strategic plan we talk about it as blurring the lines between school, work, education, college, career. Work-based learning is critical, and it's some of the most relevant and exciting learning. And so we are trying to work with our school districts across the state to say, what do you need in your schools to be able to have these partnerships flourish? Because it's not always super easy. Like if you do real apprenticeships in a certain industry, that means the student is out of the school for several days. So what does that mean for school schedules? What does that mean for grading policies? What does that mean for parents and picking up? Or what does that mean for transportation? So we really have to prepare our school system and work in partnership with them to be ready to deliver these career pathways. And we have to prepare our counselors to have this information right at their fingertips.
That's great. And Thomas, I know the Workforce Development Council has been collaborating with partners to really make it easier for educators, for students, and their families to understand what's out there and what industry is saying. Can you talk about some of the resources that you've made available around career pathways?
We take labor market information. We take information from the different industries. We work with the school systems and the training providers, public and private. And what we do is we collect all that information. So there's a lot of data involved. We take that information and we develop career pathway maps so that someone can look at an occupation. What's the entry point? What are the exit points? What is the next occupation in my career path? So if I want to move from a medical assistant to a nurse, to a registered nurse, maybe towards retirement become a nurse educator. You know, what does that pathway look like? It has all the information, like how much money do they make, what's the demand, those types of things. We put all of that out in a public-facing free resource called Careers in Colorado, and that's where we go to schools, we go to workforce centers, and we help their staff learn how to use the tool. And then, of course, we rely on a lot of the work-based learning materials and some of the stuff from the education department on how to have those career-ready conversations.
So career pathway maps, it's a visual that an individual could really sit down and look at and get from where they are today to where they want to go. That's really great. And as I understand, education was an industry of focus this year. Katy, can you tell us a little bit more? Why do education pathways matter to Colorado?
Sure. Well, number one, I'm biased, I admit, but I think teaching and education is the most important career path we have, because they are teaching all of the other students to become in whatever pathway they choose. So I think it's really critical that we have the best, the brightest, the highest energy people in teaching. And it is an industry in and of itself. I think sometimes we forget that education, the sector of education, is in the top four workforce sectors in the state. So, 1 in 4 jobs is related to education. So it in and of itself is a workforce and a business need. So, and we have in Colorado had teacher shortages, and especially in certain areas like math, science, special education, and in our rural communities. So we've really doubled down on our partnership to say, actually, education should be the business area of focus for this year. And so we're building out, what does it look like to be all types of educators in the education sector? How do you get credentialed to do that? What are the pathways? And then we're building a system which is not quite off the press yet, but Teach Colorado, which is going to be a platform for folks to be a one-stop shop to say, I'm really excited about teaching, and how do I get into this, and can I have a mentor, and can I have someone to talk to? So we're really excited about that, but it's the foundation for really a lot of our economy in Colorado.
It's really exciting to hear some of that work happening. And we know also this work is happening at the local level. Are there examples of things happening in the K-12 districts throughout the state that you want to share?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of great things happening. I just picked out a couple, but for example, in Greeley, we had a student let me take a step back. First of all, the Colorado education system has some innovative things going on too with our graduation guidelines. We are a state that offers multiple pathways for graduation, which means that students can show their work in a number of ways. They can do capstones, they can do work-based learning, so it's not just the traditional ways of acquiring credits. And so that's exciting. And because we have those flexible pathways, we had in Greeley, a student used a project for his graduation guidelines to transform an old quarry into a fishery, helping the local economy and using, unused space, using effectively unused space in the community. In Colorado Springs, we have students working on the National Cybersecurity Center to prevent computer hacking. We know some of the best thinking comes from our youth on computers, and we have other pathways in manufacturing happening in the Peyton-Widefield area in southern Colorado, where kids are getting industry high-tech certificates in manufacturing, and they're able to get a high-paying job right out of high school.
I love those examples because it's really about kids getting out of the classroom and out into the real world and putting into practice what they're learning, which I imagine involves a lot of partners. For businesses who are listening in, what can they do to help?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we're learning that still. We're getting better about how do we pair businesses with education, because sometimes we do speak a different language, and we're getting better at translating for each other. But but I think it's making sure, first, the thing I said before, making sure our education institutions are prepared to welcome businesses and say, like, the students need to be able to be in the workplace and more than just maybe an internship, like solving real problems, which takes real time. And then the businesses need to have the infrastructure to be able to support younger students, that are not just their normal adult workforce. So, I'll give a shout out to TalentFOUND.org. There are ways that you can connect and learn about industries and how education and business are partnering there. But we really do want businesses to think about what would it be like to have apprenticeships, especially businesses that are struggling to find the workforce they need. If they get in early with our high school students are brilliant and they can solve real problems. And so it does take some infrastructure for both the business side and the education side, but we can get it done.
That's great.
I was just going to say, I like to think that these businesses are priming their next employees, essentially, right? So go ahead and invest early. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and you build loyalty and a lot of times those apprentices stay with the business, and they're building their pipeline and their recruitment efforts.
Yeah.
And I think Thomas and I know that firsthand. We have a youth apprentice, Ethan, in our office who has been phenomenal in helping out with so much of our work. We're switching to a Salesforce system, and he's actually helping to lead the charge with that. So really exciting to have that young energy in the office.
He's been on the show. He was super great. Yeah.
A true data steward.
Yes.
So he won't have a problem finding a job.
Thomas, we're hearing apprenticeships and work-based learning and other examples happening in K-12. How does that fit in more broadly with the work of Kuhr Pathways?
It fits in perfectly, and what we really want to do is be able to share with the public what are those opportunities that are available. And by that I mean not only the apprentices, but the businesses hosting the apprentices, and how much of that work of getting an apprentice up and running, you're paired with an educational institution or entity that is providing education. You're also typically set up with someone that helps do some of the paperwork and getting it through, and especially for like a registered apprentice.
Right.
If you want a registered apprenticeship, those are high quality apprenticeships. The apprentices get paid. It leads to academic credentialing, those types of things. So it's really important that businesses talk to other businesses that have had apprentices and really understand what are the good, bad, and the ugly of having an apprentice. And I think mostly you'll see it's a boon to the business. It's an obvious boon to the individual that's participating in it. So we don't separate out apprenticeships from career pathways or the educational experience. It's all part of that continuum. And I think you may have heard about the work-based learning continuum, but at different phases of a young person's career development, they're looking at awareness. And so a lot of the career pathways stuff is a lot about building awareness. What is a ER nurse, and how is that different from the nurse that I saw in the office when I was in there? Another kind of a turning point is industry can really inform the educators. So in apprenticeships, things are important, like, am I going to walk out of this experience with an industry recognized credential? So I have a young person in my household, and he's getting SolidWorks certificates, and those are things that he could use to be employed almost straight out of high school. And pairing that with an apprenticeship or another work-based learning experience, that affords him the ability to go to work, start learning, and then maybe pick up a bachelor's degree as he goes along. So it's never really as clean as back in my day when you went to high school, you went to college, and then you went to work.
Right.
We're wanting folks, young people especially, to work throughout that experience.
And I think that's what we're trying to do in the K through 12 sector as well, is build a lot more on-ramps and off-ramps. The workforce is changing so rapidly now, we don't, a lot of times the quote is used that like we don't even know what we're preparing our students for 10 years from now or 5 years from now, which means we need to prepare nimble, flexible people, but also nimble, flexible education opportunities, which means you might be doing some work in the K through 12 sector, then you might go to work for a little while, then you might think that you need another little micro credential, so you go back to community college, and then you go, you learn a little bit more about what you want, and then you go to a 4-year, so we want to blend and blur all those on-ramps and off-ramps because the world is changing so quickly. We're going to have to be more nimble.
Absolutely. Last month, we talked about 55 plus Coloradans, actually. And so now they're having to relearn keeping that work-based learning, keeping that up, right? And so if we can create that now with our youth.
And 3 out of 4 jobs, we do know, will require some form of after high school education. And we want to make lots of those opportunities available.
And one quick thing, when we talk to the industries, they tell us what things they do recognize, so those certificates or those skill sets, things like IT and cybersecurity, business moves much faster than education can react. So the sooner we get, we don't use that software anymore, we now use this software. That's important to let us know so that we can feed that to educators and they can stay as nimble as possible.
And that's why work-based learning is important, because they're getting that education on the job, and they're seeing those changes in real time.
Absolutely.
So lots of work happening, lots of exciting examples. What are you most excited about for the year ahead?
Well, from our perspective, I think continuing to build out those education pathways. It has been a talk of the town at the legislature about the needs we have for teacher shortage, and again, to make all of this work, we want to have the best and the brightest workforce in teaching so that they can inspire our kids to explore all of these different careers and make sure that Colorado has the workforce they need. They, working on our Teach Colorado platform that will encourage and connect prospective teachers, and we're going to go all the way down into middle school and high school to do that. So again, that site's not up and running yet, but we're working on it with a public-private partnership with lots of collaborative partners. Again, back to the Colorado spirit of collaboration, and we can't do it alone. And then also our governor has been real supportive of expanding concurrent enrollment, which is a really important avenue to get college-based credit to show students that they can do post-secondary education. It also gives them a leg up in cost because they get to get that in the K through 12 system and not pay for it, and then they don't have to pay for those credits in post-secondary. And so we're working with districts to figure out how they can expand those options, and the governor's budget did include some grants for that, so we're excited about that.
Fantastic. I love hearing all of that. One of the things that I think we do underestimate is teachers, right? We need to make sure that we're focusing on that. We have a lot of kids that really get excited about being a teacher. They fall in love with their teachers, right? So let's continue to inspire those kids to keep on that career pathway. We do have to take a quick break. Thank you both so much for joining us. Again, Dr. Katy Anthes, and Dr. Thomas Hartman, we appreciate you being on. When we return here with Renise, we're going to have 2 new guests and 1 more by phone, so stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. We'll be right back. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. You can find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are here with Colorado Workforce Development Council, and we are talking early childhood education and education career pathways. I have with me here in studio Renise Walker. She is the senior consultant for CWDC. Great last segment. I really enjoyed that.
Honored to be with Dr. Anthes and Thomas Hartman, and we talked about the whole education continuum. So this half, we really are digging to the earliest part of the continuum with leaders in early childhood education. So we have on the phone Jeff. Jeff, I wonder if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kuhr, and I'm the Director of Public Health in Mesa County, so over in Grand Junction. And I also serve on the Colorado Early Childhood Leadership Commission, and my public health agency in the past 3 years has gotten deeply involved in early childhood education.
Thank you, Jeff, and we'll learn more about the work that you all are doing later. We're also joined by Pamela, who is a powerhouse in the early childhood space. Pamela, tell us more about some of the roles you play in early childhood education.
Well, thank you first, Renise and Alex, for having me here today. I'm really excited to be able to share. I'm the president and CEO of Mile High Early Learning. We are the oldest and largest provider of subsidized early care and education in Denver. We serve over 7,000 children annually through our early learning centers, our partner agencies, as well as our drop-in centers. And we do outreach to family, friend, and neighbor providers, and those are where the majority of children under 3 are cared for if they're not with their parents. And then our other focus is on professional development, so helping people in the field to be prepared and ready and kind of stay on top of all the things that are happening. We provide early Head Start and Head Start programming, so that's comprehensive services. And our primary focus are families who have limited means or access to quality early childhood.
Thank you, Pamela, for being here. And Alex, in the first segment, we talked about the importance of business being at the center of this work. So excited to be joined by Lindsey. Lindsey, tell us more about you and your role.
Again, thanks for having me here. I'm with Small Business Majority, and we're a nonprofit organization that really is dedicated to empowering small businesses through education and advocacy. And I'm the outreach manager, so I am in charge of engaging small businesses with workshops as well as policy and different tools to really empower the small business community here in Colorado.
And Lindsey, what's the connection between small business and early childhood education?
Oh, there's so many connections. Really, our polling shows that more than 1/3 of small business owners with children report that lack of access to affordable and high-quality childcare and education was a barrier to starting their business. Additionally, on the other side, employees struggle with childcare is really impacting small businesses and their productivity. More than 1/3 of employees report that childcare issues for their employees have affected their job performances and productivity, which really is a weigh on small businesses in our communities here in Colorado.
Which is what we really thrive on, actually.
Yes, we're a big small business state here. Yeah.
And Pamela, can you tell us, when we talk about early childhood education, what are we talking about?
So the focus is on children from birth to 8 years old, so children through 3rd grade. 90% of brain development happens during that time, and frankly, the majority of that is even happening by the age of 3. Children that age think of them as holistic learners, so they're learning about how to regulate their emotions, they're learning language, they're developing motor skills, and all of those things are important for them to give a good foundation and be successful later in life. I was thinking about when you were sharing, Lindsey, that 2/3 of children under 6 have both parents in the workforce. So it's a really high percentage and some issues around being able to meet that need.
So important.
Yeah, and when we think about quality, so we want quality early care and education, so that really focuses on those interactions between the adult caregiver and the child. So parents, but teachers, other staff, how they're interacting, it's responsive, caring, nurturing, that they're in an environment that's supportive for their exploration and also safe, and then healthy nutrition. And so all of that has to happen in those first few years to be able to thrive as an adult.
So early childhood, really critical for the development of young people, but also for businesses in the state. Jeff, you mentioned that you have a dual role with both the Mesa County Department of Public Health as well as the Early Childhood Leadership Commission of the state. What are some of the key challenges that you're seeing around early childhood education?
Well, certainly we see challenges statewide, and they're all very similar. The number one thing is the pay for the teachers and the aides. In Mesa County, with we've gotten so deep into this, we see that child care is really just seen as the sole responsibility of the parent and of the child care providers, and so it's difficult to get other sectors to see the value of childhood education and to then subsequently invest in it. And then locally in Mesa County, it's very difficult to get tax dollars to do anything. We know that early childhood education just got added to the taxing district opportunities, but that's just the last thing that'll ever happen over here. So it's tough. Our tuition is the lowest in the state because of our economy. Our median household income is $14,000 less than the state on average. And so this leads to low pay for teachers and aides, which results in a shortage of licensed quality child care slots in Mesa County.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jeff. And I know each of your organizations is really doing a lot to chip away at some of the challenges we're seeing in early childhood education. Pamela and Lindsey, I wonder if each of you could share what are some of the things you're doing to address the challenges?
Sure. I just would add the other things that are happening is that the population of children is growing, which makes sense, right? But with that growth and is an increased demand for early childhood, another 33% in 10 years. At the same time, available licensed care has been decreasing. And so trying to address what some of those issues are. We are also really focused on teacher retention, teacher turnover. So we have been conducting actually a research project that was inspired by the Colorado Early Childhood Workforce Survey that talked about the issues for staff turnover. Number one is compensation. So we did a very dramatic increase in our compensation for staff. And this year we're doing other interventions to focus on teachers feeling more prepared for working with children, especially those that have behaviors that are challenging to adults. The world has really changed. As I think Dr. Anthes was saying earlier, or Dr. Hartman, that our education system doesn't move along as quickly, right? And so we are then hopeful in the next 2 years that we can show that compensation, but also these other strategies that can be more cost effective would have an impact on staff retention. We're very focused in terms of our professional development for our staff. That was the other piece that came across in research is just, do teachers feel like they're ready to work with children and the issues that are that children are exposed to nowadays that wasn't the case in past years?
So when it comes to meeting the demand for more early childhood education slots, I'm hearing retention is a key issue. If we can't keep professionals in the field, it's hard to serve that. What's the work that's happening to attract new professionals into early childhood education? They also earlier heard a little bit about the apprenticeships and sort of alternative pathways.
So what Mile High Early Learning we're focusing on is how do we sort of prime the pump and create that pipeline ourselves. So we have a Child Development Associate program. It's a foundational credential in early childhood that helps meet the first requirement in licensing and also meets early Head Start requirements. We have that available in English and Spanish online, center-based, family child care. So the idea is to really recruit from the community where we're serving children and then giving them an opportunity for the pipeline, but also then their career path. So if you have a CDA, you can then get credits towards an AA. We're always trying to connect it to what kind of happens next, what your next step is.
And Jeff, in Mesa County, you all are also doing work to attract and retain professionals in the field. Can you talk a little bit about what you all are doing?
Sure. We have an effort that it's called Child Care 8000, and we're trying to establish a viable early childhood education industry in the county. So with that effort, we're trying to double the number of child care slots. So we're trying to get to 8,000 slots. But with that, only 13% of our existing licensed child care facilities are of high quality, which is a grade 3 or higher. And so at the same time, we'd like to get 5 times the number of high quality providers because there's a component to this that's school readiness. Our fourth grade reading and math scores are 25% lower than the state, and we see the effects of that greatly by the time they get to Colorado Mesa University or other colleges. And so we're just, we're working to double the number of high-quality slots, and we're doing it through kind of three ways. Increase provider profit by promoting a co-op or a shared service resource. Because right now the average pay for a lead teacher is $11.50, and to that earlier point, with we do the CDA process for credentialing over here. It's hard to pull people in when they know they're going to go into an $11.50 an hour job. We'd like to at least get it to $13 an hour. Now, beyond that, it's very difficult to ever see benefits with some of these or with any of these jobs. So we're looking at maybe could we try to promote free childcare for the employees or something like that. But so it's increased provider profit through the co-op, then create a system for workforce development with our Department of Human Services and our Workforce Center, and then engage the business community as potential investors. And we're doing that through EPIC out of Denver. Gloria Higgins has been very helpful with that effort.
Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. Again, we're hearing business mentioned. Lindsey, for small businesses in the state, what opportunities exist to creatively think about and address some of these challenges?
There's a ton of opportunity. I think business owners have the power to really elevate their voice on the local, state, and federal level to get more funding for childcare. Businesses, especially small businesses, are highly valued in those spaces, and so becoming an advocate for those issues is huge. As well as we, as Small Business Majority, alongside about half a dozen other nonprofits, are launching, you speak of a co-op, Jeff, we are launching a co-op in Northwest Aurora as we speak. Our first cohort started about a month ago, and it should be ready to launch in October, and it's really to address the childcare needs, because in that area of the Denver metro area is a high area of, a lack of affordable childcare. It's a big childcare desert. And so creative, innovative solutions like a co-op or a trade association is a really incredible way to empower communities to address these issues and also empower small businesses. Oftentimes, childcare providers are small businesses, and so empowering and supporting small business owners through that, whether it's technical assistance or funding, is also another huge way to do it.
And Lindsey and Jeff, for those who might not be as familiar with co-op models, what does that look like in practice?
So from our perspective, it's as much as we can do for the back office component. That's where we saw the greatest variation with all of our child care centers is the back office piece. And so we're working with Early Learning Ventures over there in Denver. They've got Kuhr software that most of our providers purchase. And so if we have somebody providing technical assistance that works for the health department to get everybody fully utilizing that software, because it's got everything. There's a purchasing component to it. There's accounting. There's even things that get loaded up for licensing, which, we've taken on that licensing responsibility as well through the health department. So if we can assist them to be as proficient in core software, but it isn't as easy as saying, let's train them all. It isn't. We have to always have somebody in place to be able to do a lot of the keystrokes on their behalf. And so that's sort of the beginning of that. The purchasing piece, as I mentioned, when we ask the providers, where do you buy gloves, they say Sam's for $7 a box. And we know through this purchasing module, we can get them for $2.50. But we just can't get people to utilize it. So our role is to give them a nudge, give them that support, and once they utilize it, we'll increase their profits.
So increasing their power. And we're hearing collaboration mentioned in the co-op model. We also talked a lot about it in the first segment. Can you tell us more about who are some of the other partners that you all are working with to really drive these initiatives forward?
Well, we work closely with our institutions of higher education, so community colleges as well as four-year schools. The idea, again, is that we can help people work towards a higher degree. We also, through our Early Head Start grant, we're able to reach out to current childcare providers, center-based or family childcare homes. We're serving also a childcare desert in Gloveville, Swansea, and Elyria, with the hope, again, of attracting people who want to run a small business but need support. So funding, but mentoring as well, help with budgeting, that kind of thing. And so that's been a great experience for us. We're hoping to do a lot more in that area. We also work closely with our school districts. So Denver Public Schools is a wonderful partner. We work with the city and county of Denver. So everybody is focused on ways to leverage strengths, practices, and programs that are already happening. But what in addition can we do, and how can we do that together?
And I think right now, childcare in our current setting, everyone understands that it's an issue that needs to be tackled. And so I'm finding that these conversations are very easy to have because everyone's like, yes, I need childcare. I know my neighbor does. I can't start a small business without it. And so I have been surprised by the amount of diverse partners I've had, whether it's a funder or a nonprofit organization that doesn't necessarily focus on childcare but can see the economic impact on it. I think it's just a very popular issue, especially given, we just got full day K, like we just talked about. So we're getting more funding for early childcare education, and it's on everyone's mind right now.
And I imagine, too, that a critical part of these partnerships is the partnerships with the families themselves, the parents and their kids. Jeff, you and I talked a little bit about the 2-gen work happening in Mesa County. Can you share more about that?
Sure. This whole idea did come out of a project through a 2-gen workshop that we went through. As we create our workforce, we're trying to create the workforce from a lot of the parents that are out there. If our children can thrive, if we can get a lot of these parents employed. As a matter of fact, a story came up just yesterday about this. So we had a CDA cohort. We've paid for 3 cohorts now, and the third one was condensed into a 6-week process. And so we pay for the cost of the CDA training. That's a certification training. We also pay for 9 credit hours of college. And then in this last group, we paid them a wage. We paid them $1,000 3 weeks in, and then $1,000 upon completion. And so everyone in the group made it through, and they all had a job after that. But what was interesting is we brought one of those participants in to talk with us yesterday, and she mentioned that when she did her homework for this, her children, were also doing their homework. And I asked my early childhood person that works for the health department about the curriculum, and she said, yeah, there's all sorts of parenting components to that curriculum. So some of these groups we've paid for through community services block grant dollars. So with those, we need to bring people in that are at 125% of poverty or less. And with that parenting component or parenting piece that they learn through that process, it's kind of serves 2 purposes. It's a great opportunity. So we're employing these people, we're teaching them parenting skills, we're putting them on a trajectory because there is definitely a pathway associated with this. And in the meantime, we're creating a better environment for our children.
So much to love about that model. And again, we're hearing kind of that earn and learn, an opportunity for people to earn some wages while they're increasing their skills. I'm curious, for the year ahead, what are each of you most excited about?
We, as we've all said, are excited about full day kindergarten. We're excited about the efforts to create full day preschool. And think that's a great opportunity. It helps not just preschoolers, but also infants and toddlers by providing some additional funding. As a community provider, we are different than a school district in that we are serving infants and toddlers. It is just more expensive. Having preschoolers as sort of part of the package makes us be able to make ends meet. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm excited about the Early Childhood Workforce 2020 plan, which is developed under the Early Childhood Leadership Commission. as well as the Early Childhood Professional Development Advisory Group. But it's a very ambitious plan and addresses specifically recruitment, retention, compensation. And so we've made some great progress on it, and I think just are ready to continue to implement it successfully in the end, so that our children are thriving, that our workforce is thriving.
Absolutely. And I'm very excited to have the first co-op group and co-op cohort in Northwest Aurora launch. They should be ready to go in October, and that's just creating about 20 participants and 20 childcare providers, but also 20 small business owners. And in that area, economic development through small businesses is key, and it's key to the continual growth in Aurora. That model as well is being replicated in Commerce City and beyond. So I'm very excited to work on those projects as well. And there's a lot of movement and a lot of momentum for early childhood education in our state. So I'm very excited for that.
Can't wait to see how that unfolds, and the Workforce Development Council would love to stay connected and kind of share and amplify those stories. Jeff, are there things that you're most excited about in the year ahead?
Well, we've made a lot of progress, and so we've gotten a lot of attention both at the state level and locally. I'm very proud of the partners who are sincerely engaged in this. We've got the editor of our newspaper, we've got the director of the Grand Junction Economic Partnership, we've got the Department of Human Services, and even our commissioners. 2 quotes. So from our editor of our paper, he's so into this. He said, "I see childcare as the bottleneck to the success of our community." I mean, he's into it that much. And then our Department of Human Services director said the other day, "We can't stop child abuse by addressing child abuse itself. We have to go way upstream, and childcare, early childhood education is where we need to be." So these people are speaking my language, and I'm very excited about that.
And for those who are listening to this, they really want to get involved and really want to learn more. Where can they go to learn more?
The earlychildhoodcolorado.org is the website for the Early Childhood Leadership Commission. It also has the Early Childhood framework on it, which has amazing information about programs, so what's happening statewide, and then also research. So for the people out there who like research like I do, there's great information on what's currently happening, as well as reports that have been published in the last couple of years.
And for Small Business Majority, you can, Google our name and look up our website, get a hold of me. And we also have an incredible resource website called venturize.org if you need help with business plans as well as funding streams.
Could I add just one more quick thing?
Yeah.
The other exciting thing that's happening is a tax credit for early learning professionals. And so the legislature supported that. It was bipartisan. It's a wonderful first step towards impacting compensation for early childhood professionals. And I'll just make a plug for milehighearlylearning.org if you also need more information.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much. It has been a pleasure having you on. And you can also find all of the information that we talked about here today in the description below. Find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. It has been wonderful speaking with all of you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys for being here.
This was great.